Okay, so today we're going deep on anxiety, but not just like, pre-presentation jitters.
All right.
We're talking about anxiety disorders,
Yeah.
like the kind that really mess with your life.
Absolutely.
And to guide us, we've got the Anxiety and Phobia workbook.
Oh, good choice.
It's by Dr. Edmund Bourne.
A classic.
Yeah, he's a psychologist who's helped like millions
My,
understand and manage these conditions. It's a big deal.
yeah, this book sold over 1 million copies.
Yeah, so we know it's hitting a nerve with people.
Definitely.
What we're going to do today is pull out those like
Hmm.
most useful, actionable things, the stuff that can actually help.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to kick us off, I think we got to get clear on something.
Yeah.
Anxiety versus fear.
Yeah.
I feel like people use them interchangeably.
Last time, right.
But Dr. Bourne's like, hold on, they're not the same.
Not quite, no.
So how's he break it down?
So he says fear that's specific, right?
Yeah.
Like fear of spiders, super common.
Yeah.
You see one, heart's racing, you want to get away,
Makes sense.
straightforward. But anxiety,
Yeah.
it's this like free-floating dread, harder to pin down.
Ah, okay, I get that.
It hangs around, even when there's no obvious danger.
It's like fear has a target,
Yeah,
but anxiety is just this like fog that rolls in and you're
Yes.
like, something bad's going to happen,
Mm.
but you don't know what.
exactly. And that makes it worse, almost.
It's way worse. Like at least with fear,
Right.
you know what you're dealing with.
You can prepare.
But this anxiety, it's sneaky.
Oh, totally.
Dr. Bourne gives this example in the book.
Oh, yeah?
A middle schooler, good grades,
Yeah.
but anxious about them anyway.
I remember that feeling.
No real threat, but the worry is there.
It just sits there,
It's like your brain's inventing problems.
creating problems out of thin air.
Right. But that brings up something important, right?
What's that?
Just because we feel anxious sometimes doesn't mean we have a full-blown disorder.
Huge point. And Dr. Bourne, he's really clear on this.
Okay, good.
It's not just about feeling anxious. There's criteria.
So it's not how often, but like
Intensity matters, too.
intensity.
How long it lasts, and this is key,
Yeah.
how much it messes with your life.
Oh, right, that impact.
Yeah. If anxiety is affecting work, relationships, even just fun,
You can't enjoy anything.
right, then it's crossed the line.
From normal worry to
Something more serious, yeah.
it's like anxiety's on a spectrum.
I like that, the spectrum.
We all experience it to some degree,
Absolutely.
but for some folks, it takes over.
It becomes this dominant force.
So those are the anxiety disorders, that severe end.
Exactly. And there are different types even then.
Oh, so it's not one size fits all.
Not at all. Each has its own,
Sure.
quirks, yeah, and challenges.
So let's break down some of these, the common ones.
Right. Where should we start?
Well, one I always hear about is panic disorder.
Oh, yeah. That one's tough.
Panic attacks sound
It
terrifying.
can be, yeah.
What's that even feel like?
Imagine your body going full fight or flight,
Okay.
but there's no danger, no reason.
Just out of nowhere.
It's your heart racing. Maybe you can't breathe.
Oh, wow.
Dizzy. Some people think they're having a heart attack.
It's that intense.
Dr. Bourne, he calls it impending doom.
Oh.
Like something horrible's about to happen.
Even if you know it's not.
Logically, you know, but your body's not listening.
There's a story in the book, right?
Oh, yeah. This one sticks with you.
What happened?
A model having a panic attack.
Okay.
Mid-photo shoot.
Oh.
Can you imagine?
Oh, how awful. Talk about pressure.
It's embarrassing, right?
Totally. So that's panic disorder.
Yeah, those sudden, intense episodes.
Okay. So what else is there?
Well, there's generalized anxiety disorder, or PA.
GAD. Okay.
Less about those panic bursts, more
It's
like
like constant worry.
chronic worry, yeah, all the time.
The worry warts, but like times 10.
Kind of, but
And it's got to be more than that, right?
it's excessive, out of proportion to the actual risk.
So they're worrying about stuff that's not...
Not really a big deal, but to them, it is.
Like what kind of stuff?
Oh, it can be anything. Their health,
Mm-hmm.
finances, relationships, even little daily things.
And they just can't shut it off.
The worry's always there, humming in the background.
I bet that's exhausting.
Oh, totally. It leads to fatigue,
You
irritability,
can't focus.
right? And even physical stuff, muscle tension, headaches.
Wow. It's like a whole body thing.
It really is. And Dr. Bourne points out,
Yeah.
GED is more common in women.
Interesting.
Makes you wonder, right? Is it hormones
Maybe.
or societal stuff, the pressures they face?
Could be both. Who knows?
It shows how complex this all is.
Multi-layered.
Many factors at play, definitely.
Okay, so we got panic disorder, GD. What else is on the list?
OCD is one that deserves attention.
OCD. Okay.
I think people get this one wrong a lot.
Oh, yeah. They're like, I'm so OCD about my desk.
Right. But it's way more than just liking things neat.
So it's not just being organized.
It's deeper than that. It's about these thoughts.
Intrusive thoughts.
Yeah, unwanted, they call them obsessions.
Obsessions, okay.
And then there are these behaviors or mental acts.
This is the compulsion part.
Exactly. Compulsions, they feel they have to do them.
To deal with the thoughts.
Yeah, to manage that anxiety the thoughts cause.
It's like a loop.
It is a loop, a vicious one.
Can you give an example?
Sure, classic one is contamination fears.
Germs, that kind of thing.
Right, so they develop these hand-washing rituals.
To feel safe.
Trying to neutralize the germs. Washing dozens of times a day.
Oh, wow, that's rough.
Their skin gets raw, cracked even, but they can't stop.
The obsession drives the compulsion.
And the compulsion, it gives temporary relief.
But it makes the obsession worse.
It reinforces it, yeah.
So it's not about being tidy, it's feeling trapped.
Exactly. Trapped in these cycles, you can't escape.
Even if you know it doesn't make sense.
Logically, no. But that's OCD.
And these compulsions, they come in different flavors.
Oh, yeah. Cleaning, checking, counting, arranging, all sorts.
Taking up so much time.
And disrupting life, absolutely.
Okay, so we've got 3 so far. Panic disorder, GAD, OCD.
Yep.
There's one more we got to talk about.
This one's particularly tough, PTSD.
PTSD, that one hits hard.
It does. It's not everyday anxiety.
It's a result of trauma.
Exactly. A severe trauma.
This is like car accidents, disasters.
Yeah, assault, combat, witnessing something horrific.
It's not just bad memories, right?
No, it's how that trauma keeps impacting you.
Even years later.
Long after. It's like
it changes you.
it gets etched into your nervous system.
Making it hard to feel safe.
In the present moment, yeah.
Dr. Bourne mentions it's often seen in
soldiers, assault survivors, anyone who's been through
something truly awful.
It's not just flashbacks or nightmares either.
There's more to it.
Feeling on edge all the time, avoiding certain things.
People, places, yeah.
Sleep problems, trouble concentrating. It's pervasive.
Wow. So we've got this whole spectrum of anxiety disorders.
We've barely scratched the surface, really.
But what causes this stuff in the first place?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. Is it all in our heads?
Or is it biological? Is there something physical going on? Well, Dr. Bourne, he lays out 4 main causes.
Okay.
And the first one, it is biological.
So there's a physical component to this.
There can be, yeah.
It's not just our thoughts and feelings.
Not always, but it can definitely play a role.
So give me an example. What kind of biological stuff?
Well, he mentions hypoglycemia.
Hypoglycemia, that's low blood sugar, right?
Exactly. Did you know that can actually mimic a panic attack?
Are you serious? I had no idea.
Yeah, it's because when your blood sugar drops, your body releases adrenaline to compensate.
To bring it back up.
But adrenaline, that's also the fight or flight hormone.
Oh, right. So it's like your body thinks
that you're in danger, even though you're just hungry.
So that sudden rush of adrenaline
can trigger those panic attack symptoms.
The racing heart, sweating, all that.
Whole 9 yards.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Makes you realize how connected our mind and body are.
Totally. So eating regularly, keeping your blood sugar stable.
Could be super important for anxiety.
Who knew?
It's a piece of the puzzle for sure.
Okay, so hypoglycemia. What other biological factors?
He also talks about hormonal shifts.
Especially for women, right?
Right, like premenstrual anxiety, very common.
Yeah, I know a lot of women who...
their anxiety goes through the roof before their period.
It's like clockwork.
It is. And those hormonal fluctuations...
they can really mess with you.
They can. And major changes, too, like pregnancy, menopause.
Like life transitions.
Exactly. So, while we can't always point to one biological cause, these examples show that our physical health...
it impacts our mental health, for sure.
Absolutely. But biology is just one piece of the puzzle.
Right. There's got to be more to it.
Dr. Bourne, he dives into the psychological stuff, too.
Okay, so like how we think and feel.
And social factors, how we interact with the world.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Oh, absolutely. Especially the long-term stuff.
Long-term, what's that mean?
Long-term predisposing causes.
That's a mouthful.
It is. But basically,
break it down for me.
It's about how our early experiences, especially in childhood, they can shape how vulnerable we are to anxiety later on.
So like our past sets the stage for...
how we handle stress as adults.
Makes sense. We don't come into the world
with a blank slate.
No. Those early experiences, good and bad.
They mold us.
So you're saying if someone had a rough childhood, they're more likely to have anxiety later.
It's not a guarantee, of course.
Right.
But research shows a strong link
between those early experiences and anxiety.
Exactly. And Dr. Bourne, He highlights some key things.
Like what kind of stuff makes you more prone to anxiety?
He talks about sensitive personalities, which makes sense.
Right. If you're easily overwhelmed.
More reactive to things, yeah.
You're going to struggle more with stress.
It's logical, but it goes beyond just personality, though.
Okay, so what else?
Parenting styles, that's a big one.
The home environment, that makes sense. What kind of parenting are we talking about here?
Well, he points to things like overly high expectations.
From the parents, yeah.
Kids constantly feeling pressured to perform.
Achieve, be perfect.
Or the opposite, parents who are super anxious themselves.
Oh, wow.
Overprotective, warning kids about dangers all the time.
So either way, the kid's not learning.
To cope on their own?
They're either not good enough or the world's too scary.
Exactly. Either way, they don't develop that.
Confidence, that they can handle things.
Self-efficacy, that's the word for it.
And that lack of confidence, it leads to more anxiety later.
Because you haven't learned to face challenge.
You haven't had the chance to mess up and learn from it.
And that creates a cycle. You worry, you avoid.
So you never learn that you can handle it.
And then you worry even more the next time.
It's like those early years create the blueprint.
The foundation for how we approach life.
And if that foundation is all fear and avoidance,
it's going to be so much harder
to deal with the tough stuff that life throws at you.
Absolutely. It raises a big question, though.
What's that?
Can we unlearn those early patterns?
Can we rewire our brains to be less anxious?
Even if it was ingrained in childhood.
It makes me think about neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
The idea that our brains can change.
Throughout our lives, it's hopeful.
So even a tough childhood
doesn't mean you're stuck with anxiety forever,
yeah.
Right? Not a life sentence.
Okay, so we've got biology, long-term stuff. What about those short-term triggers?
Those are the more immediate events.
The things that happen in your life that kickstart the anxiety.
Even if you're not usually an anxious person.
So like specific situations as opposed to...
deeper long-term causes, yeah.
Give me some examples.
Imagine a big presentation at work.
That'll do it.
Or going through a breakup. Or a sudden financial crisis.
Those are all pretty universally stressful.
They are, and they can really ramp up anxiety.
Even if you don't have a diagnosed disorder.
Exactly. It's important to remember, though, those triggers, they're different for everyone.
What stresses me out might not bother you at all.
Exactly. It depends on your experiences, sensitivities.
And how you cope.
It's not just the event itself.
It's how we interpret it, how we react to it.
And that's where our individual differences come in.
Right. If you've already got those patterns
of anxious thinking and avoidance,
you're more likely to see those triggers as threats.
And react with fear and worry.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
Okay, so we got biology, long-term stuff, short-term triggers. What's the last piece?
The final category, this one's crucial for understanding.
Understanding what?
Why anxiety sticks around, even when the trigger's gone.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is it?
Dr. Bourne calls them the maintaining causes.
Maintaining causes. That sounds kind of ominous.
It can be, yeah. It's the things we do.
Unconsciously used.
That actually make the anxiety worse without realizing it.
So even after the big presentation is over, or the financial crisis is resolved.
The anxiety's still there.
Lingering, yeah. And the biggest culprit.
Hit me with it.
Avoidance.
Avoidance. But that's like instinctual, right?
It seems like it. If something makes you anxious.
You avoid it. Makes sense.
On the surface, yeah. But Dr. Bourne, he's like...
He says...
long-term, avoidance backfires. Big time.
How so?
It's like you're feeding the fear, giving it more power.
Every time you avoid something that makes you anxious...
you're reinforcing the belief that it's something to be scared of.
So, like, if you're terrified of public speaking, and you keep dodging those opportunities...
the fear just grows. It festers.
You never learn that you can actually handle it.
And it's not just situations, it's feelings, too.
What do you mean?
Suppressing your feelings, bottling things up.
That can make anxiety worse.
Oh, absolutely. Dr. Bourne's big on this.
He says.
We got to acknowledge and process our emotions.
Even the icky ones.
Especially those, because when we try to suppress them,
they don't go away.
They come out in other ways. Physical symptoms.
Irritability, even more anxiety.
The pressure cooker. Eventually it blows.
This is making me rethink how I deal with anxiety.
In what way?
I definitely avoid stuff that makes me uncomfortable. And I'm not great at, talking about my feelings.
That's very common. A lot of people do that.
But it sounds like that's actually making things worse.
It can, yeah. But the good news is...
there's good news.
with effort, we can change those patterns.
Okay, that's hopeful.
And that's what we'll dig into next time.
When we talk about Dr. Bourne's advice for managing anxiety.
Exactly. The solutions, not just the problems.
Okay, I'm ready for that.
We've laid out the what and the why.
The nuts and bolts of anxiety disorders.
Now it's time for the how-to.
How to actually get a handle on this stuff.
This book, it's not all doom and gloom.
So Dr. Bourne actually gives advice on how
to feel better, yeah.
Okay, give me a sneak peek. What's the first line of defense?
Well, exercise gets a lot of attention.
Exercise, yeah, that's always the answer.
It is, but he goes deeper than just exercise is good.
So he gets specific.
Very specific.
Yeah.
About what kind is best for anxiety.
Okay, I like that. So not just any movement will do.
He's really big on aerobic exercise.
Cardio.
And running in particular.
So lace up those shoes and hit the pavement.
That's the message.
But why running? What's so special about that?
Several reasons. First, endorphins.
Those feel-good chemicals.
They have mood-boosting effect.
Okay, that makes sense.
Second, running lowers stress hormones, like cortisol.
Which makes you anxious.
So it's a double whammy. Less of the bad, more of the good.
Love that, but it's got more than just chemicals, right?
Right. Running also gives you this sense of
accomplishment.
Yeah, you set a goal, you push yourself, you achieve it.
That builds confidence.
Boosts your resilience,
Yeah.
which is key for managing anxiety.
Because when you prove to yourself you can do hard things, it changes how you see other challenges.
Exactly. And Dr. Bourne, he gives a great example.
Oh, yeah.
Author Matt Haig, he credits running for helping him recover.
From anxiety and depression.
Severe anxiety, depression. He even wrote a book about it.
What's it called?
Reasons to Stay Alive. Our listeners should check it out.
Okay, running it is. And for extra motivation, read Matt Haig.
There you go.
So what else is in Dr. Bourne's anxiety-busting toolkit?
Well, there's this technique called exposure therapy.
Okay, exposure therapy. What's that all about?
It's about facing your fears head on.
Whoa, hold on, head on.
Yeah, but like in a controlled way.
So it's not just jumping into the deep end.
No, it's gradual, got to ease into it.
That makes more sense. So how does it work, this exposure therapy?
Dr. Bourne uses a good analogy, allergy desensitization.
Okay, like allergy shots.
Exactly. You get tiny doses of what you're allergic to.
To build up tolerance.
Right, so you don't react as badly.
So exposure therapy is kind of like that.
Very similar. You gradually expose yourself to the thing.
You trigger your anxiety.
Starting small, manageable steps.
And slowly working your way up.
Like dipping your toes in the water before you dive in.
Okay, so instead of avoiding the scary stuff,
you confront it, but in a safe environment.
With support, yeah.
Exactly. And Dr. Bourne's clear, this should be done.
With a therapist.
Yeah, a qualified one. They can tailor it to you.
Create a personalized plan.
They call it an exposure hierarchy.
Okay.
Starting with what causes minimal anxiety, then gradually to more challenging situations.
Can you give me an example? Like someone with a phobia?
Sure. Let's say fear of flying.
Pretty common one.
Oh, yeah. So the therapist might start them off.
Easy.
Just looking at pictures of planes.
Okay, not too bad.
Then maybe videos of takeoffs and landings.
Getting a little more real.
Then virtual reality even, like a flight simulation.
Wow, technology's come a long way.
It has. And as you get comfortable with each step,
you move on to the next.
Until eventually you're taking a short flight for real.
So you're retraining your brain.
To not see those things as threats.
But isn't that process still scary?
It can be, but that's why it's gradual.
Small steps.
You challenge yourself just enough to feel some anxiety.
But not so much that you freak out.
And that's where the therapist is crucial.
They keep you on track.
Provide support, coping skills, help you manage it.
And I imagine it depends on the person, too.
Of course. Some people move faster than others.
Everyone's different.
There's no right pace. The important thing is
to be patient.
Listen to your body and celebrate those wins.
Even the small ones.
Every step forward is a victory. And you know, Dr. Bourne, he talks about two different approaches.
Oh, lay them on me.
There's graded exposure, which is what we've been describing.
Okay.
And then there's flooding.
Flooding. Okay, that sounds intense.
It can be. It involves facing the scariest thing.
Right away.
Head on. No gradual buildup.
So with the fear of flying example, you just put them straight on a plane.
Essentially, yeah. The idea is to stay there.
Until the anxiety peaks and then...
kind of burns itself out.
Interesting, but risky, right?
It can be. It's not for everyone.
Definitely not.
It's usually for specific phobias. Yeah. And only with...
a very experienced therapist.
Who can assess if you're ready and provide support.
Okay, so flooding, not a DIY project.
Not recommended. Haha.
Graded exposure seems safer, more approachable.
For most people, yeah.
But this exposure therapy, does it only work for phobias?
it can be helpful for other stuff, too.
Like what?
Social anxiety, panic disorder, even OCD.
So it's about figuring out what triggers you.
Exactly.
And then gradually exposing yourself to those things.
Safely, with support.
To break that connection between the trigger and the fear.
So it doesn't control you anymore.
And it's not just about changing your behavior. It's also about changing your thoughts.
Because people with anxiety, they often have these
distorted thoughts.
Negative thoughts, that fuel the fear.
And exposure therapy helps you challenge those thoughts.
Replace them with more realistic ones.
So, like, if you're afraid of public speaking, you might think, everyone's judging me, I'm going to fail.
Yeah, classic anxiety thought.
And exposure therapy helps you go, hold on.
Most people are worried about themselves.
And even if I mess up, it's not the end of the world.
Exactly. It's about managing those thoughts.
Not letting them run the show.
And that brings us to another tool Dr. Bourne talks about.
Hit me with it.
Mindfulness and meditation.
Okay, meditation, I've heard it's good for anxiety.
Very good, yeah.
But I've always been skeptical.
In what way?
It just seems so passive. Like, how can sitting there, focusing on your breath, actually help with something as intense as anxiety?
It's a common misconception. It's not about
emptying your mind.
No, not at all. Or ignoring your feelings.
Okay, so what is it about then?
It's about becoming more aware of your thoughts.
Feelings and sensations.
In the present moment. Without judgment.
So not trying to stop those anxious thoughts.
No, it's about observing them without getting swept away.
I like that.
Like watching clouds, you see them, acknowledge them.
But you don't cling to them.
You let them drift by.
And that helps with anxiety.
It creates distance between you and the anxiety.
You realize you're not your thoughts.
You're not your feelings, you're the observer.
I like that, taking back control.
Exactly. But Dr. Bourne emphasizes mindfulness.
Yeah.
It's not a quick fix, it's a skill. Well, takes practice.
Patience.
Lots of patience.
Okay, but the payoff is worth it.
The rewards can be profound, yes.
So how do you even start with this mindfulness meditation?
There are lots of techniques.
Okay.
Some focus on the breath, some on body sensations.
Sounds, guided visualizations even. No one right way to do it.
Exactly. The key is to find what works for you.
And practice it regularly.
Consistency is key.
Dr. Bourne recommends starting small, right?
Yeah, like 5-minute sessions.
That feels doable.
And gradually increase as you get more comfortable.
Okay, but how does this actually help anxiety?
Well, research shows it can change your brain.
No way, really?
Yeah, in ways that reduce anxiety and build resilience.
So it's not just a relaxation technique.
It's rewiring your brain to be less reactive to stress.
Wow, okay. Sign me up.
It decreases activity in the amygdala, that's the fear center.
And increases activity in the prefrontal cortex.
Which helps regulate emotions.
So you're calmer, more in control.
Exactly. And beyond the brain stuff.
There's more.
Mindfulness helps you become more self-aware.
You start to recognize your triggers.
Observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment.
And respond to challenges more skillfully.
With more compassion for yourself.
That's powerful stuff.
It really is. You're not just managing anxiety.
You're transforming your relationship with it.
Exactly. But I am curious.
Thanks.
Is meditation the only mindfulness thing he talks about?
That's what I was going to ask.
Or are there other ways to, like...
bring it into your daily life.
He's big on that, actually.
That it's not just about formal meditation.
Right. It's a way of being.
Okay, I like that.
Approaching life with more awareness.
Intention, yeah. So how can we do that? What are some examples?
Well, one simple thing. Mindful breathing.
Okay, breathing. We're always doing that.
Exactly. But throughout the day.
Yeah.
Take a moment. Just notice your breath.
As it goes in and out.
You don't have to change it, just to observe it.
Gently, like you're curious about it.
That's it. It helps ground you in the present.
Calms the nervous system down.
Exactly. Those mini breaks could really help.
Break the cycle of anxious thoughts.
Bring you back to center.
I like that. Easy to do.
Anyone can do it, anywhere.
What else?
Mindful walking's another good one.
Walking.
Instead of rushing from A to B, lost in your head.
Which I do all the time.
Slow down. Pay attention to the sensations.
The feel of your feet on the ground.
The movement of your legs. What you see around you.
Turning a chore into a mini meditation.
It's a way to bring more presence into those everyday things.
It's amazing how often we're just on autopilot.
Oh, totally.
Rushing through life, not really present.
And that lack of awareness, it can feed anxiety.
Because when we're not in our bodies, in the moment.
Our minds wander.
And they usually wander to...
like worst case scenario.
To worry.
Exactly.
Okay, mindful breathing, mindful walking. What else can we be mindful of?
Eating's a big one.
Mindful eating.
Yeah, instead of just shoveling food in.
While watching TV, scrolling on your phone.
Guilty.
Oh, big time.
Try slowing down. Savor each bite.
Really taste it.
Notice the textures, the flavors, the smells.
That sounds kind of luxurious, actually.
It can be, and it not only reduces anxiety,
but makes eating more enjoyable.
It can help you develop a healthier relationship with food, too.
It's like appreciating what you're putting into your body.
Exactly, treating it with respect.
So we got breathing, walking, eating.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like mindfulness can apply to
almost anything. Anything you do.
That's the beauty of it.
The key is to bring that awareness, that intention.
In whatever you're doing.
Washing dishes, taking a shower, even conversations.
It's about being present, not just going through the motions.
So mindfulness is not just a technique. It's
a way of life. Being present in each moment instead of
dwelling on the past, worrying about the future.
And that's where anxiety lives, right?
It feeds on that.
The what ifs. The shoulda, coulda, wouldas.
All that mental chatter.
Mindfulness brings us back to now.
To the only place where we actually have control.
This is all great, but I keep thinking about...
What's that?
Those long-term causes, the childhood stuff.
Mm-hmm. The patterns we develop early on.
Can mindfulness really undo that?
That's a big question.
Right, like if those patterns are so ingrained.
Dr. Bourne tackles this head-on, actually.
He does. What's he say?
He acknowledges those early experiences.
They have a lasting impact.
But he also emphasizes our brains can change.
Neuroplasticity, we were talking about that.
It's a powerful thing.
So it's not a life sentence.
Not at all.
We're not doomed to repeat those patterns forever.
No, and while mindfulness can't erase the past,
it can help us reframe it.
Create a new relationship with it.
I like that.
By becoming aware of those patterns.
Seeing how they're affecting us now.
We can make conscious choices about how we respond.
Instead of just reacting automatically.
Like habit, yeah.
It's empowering. Like those things happen. They shaped me.
But they don't define you.
I can choose to create a new story.
Write a new chapter.
And that's what mindfulness gives us, that power to choose.
To not be controlled by our past.
To respond differently.
Even when things get tough.
This is making me see anxiety in a whole new light.
How so?
It's not just something to be afraid of, to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
It's something we can learn from, grow from.
That's a beautiful insight, and Dr. Bourne, he'd agree.
He would.
He sees anxiety not as an enemy.
But as a
teacher, a guide, a signal that something needs attention.
So instead of trying to shut it up,
we can try to understand it.
Listen to what it's trying to tell us.
Exactly. Shift the mindset from anxiety's the enemy
to anxiety's a messenger.
And once you get the message,
you can do something about it.
Whether it's practical stuff like exercise, therapy,
or deeper self-reflection, personal growth. This deep dive has been so eye-opening.
Good. I'm glad.
It's not just about getting rid of anxiety.
Right.
It's about understanding it, learning from it.
Maybe even using it as fuel for positive change.
That's a great way to put it, and I think that's a perfect place to wrap up for today.
I agree. We've covered a lot of ground.
We've explored the what, the why, even some of the how.
The complex world of anxiety.
But we'll pick up next time.
With even more practical strategies from Dr. Bourne.
For managing and even thriving with anxiety.
Because it is possible.
Absolutely. So to our listeners, keep exploring, keep learning, and most importantly,
be kind to yourselves. Is meditation the only mindfulness thing he talks about?
That's what I was going to ask.
Or are there other ways to bring it into your daily life?
Yeah, make it more practical.
He's really big on that, actually.
So it's not just about sitting on a cushion for an hour.
Right. He sees it as a way of being,
Okay. I like that. A way of being.
Approaching everything with more awareness.
Intention.
Exactly.
So how can we do that? What are some examples of everyday mindfulness?
Well, one really simple thing is mindful breathing.
Okay, breathing. We're always doing that.
Exactly. But throughout the day, just take a moment to notice your breath.
As it goes in and out.
Yep. You don't have to change it. Just observe it.
Gently, like you're curious about it.
That's it. It can really help ground you in the present moment.
Calms the nervous system down.
Exactly. Those little mini breaks, they can really make a difference.
Break the cycle of those anxious thoughts.
Bring you back to center.
I like that. Easy to do. Anyone can do it. Anywhere.
Exactly. No special equipment required.
What else? What else can we be mindful of?
Mindful walking's another good one.
Walking? How do you walk mindfully?
Instead of just, rushing from point A to point B, lost in your thoughts.
Which I do all the time.
Try slowing down. Pay attention to the sensations of walking.
The feel of your feet on the ground.
Yes. The movement of your legs. What you see around you.
It's like turning a chore into a mini meditation.
It is. It's a way to bring more presence into those everyday things.
It's amazing how much of our lives we just spend on autopilot, you know?
Oh, totally.
Rushing through the day, not really present.
And that lack of awareness, it can feed anxiety.
Because when we're not in our bodies, in the moment,
our minds tend to wander.
And where do they usually wander to?
The worst case scenario. All the what ifs.
To all the things that could go wrong.
Exactly.
Okay, mindful breathing, mindful walking. What else?
Mindful eating can be transformative.
Mindful eating, so like not just inhaling your food.
Exactly. Instead of just shoveling food in your mouth while watching TV or scrolling through your phone.
Oh, guilty as charged.
Try slowing down. Savor each bite.
Really taste it.
Yes. Notice the textures, the flavors, the smells.
That sounds kind of luxurious, actually.
It can be. And it not only reduces anxiety, but it makes eating more enjoyable.
It's like you're actually appreciating the food.
And you might find you make healthier choices, too, when you're really paying attention.
So we've got breathing, walking, eating. It seems like you can apply mindfulness to, like, almost anything.
You absolutely can. The key is to bring that awareness, that intention, to whatever you're doing.
Washing the dishes, taking a shower, even having conversations.
It's about being present, not just going through the motions.
So mindfulness is not just a technique. It's
a way of life.
Being present in each moment instead of dwelling on the past, worrying about the future.
And that's where anxiety thrives,
right?
On that preoccupation with what was and what might be.
Mindfulness brings us back to now.
To the only place where we actually have power.
This is all great, but I keep thinking about those long-term causes we talked about, the stuff from childhood.
The patterns we develop early on.
Can mindfulness really help undo that? Like if those patterns are so ingrained?
That's a big question, and Dr. Bourne, he tackles it head on.
He does. What does he say?
Well, he acknowledges that those early experiences, they can have a lasting impact.
Right. It's not like we can just erase the past.
But he also emphasizes that our brains are capable of change. Throughout our lives.
Neuroplasticity, we were talking about that earlier.
It's a powerful thing.
So it's not a life sentence. We're not doomed to repeat those patterns forever.
Not at all. And while mindfulness can't erase the past, it can help us create a new relationship with it.
I like that. A new relationship with the past.
By becoming aware of those patterns, seeing how they're affecting us now.
We can make conscious choices about how we respond.
Instead of just reacting automatically out of habit.
It's empowering, like those things happened, they shaped me, but they don't define me.
Exactly.
I can choose to create a new story.
Write a new chapter.
And that's what mindfulness gives us, that power to choose.
The power to not be controlled by our past.
To respond differently, even when things get tough. This is making me see anxiety in a whole new light.
How so?
It's not just something to be afraid of, to avoid.
It's something we can learn from, grow from.
That's a beautiful insight. And Dr. Bourne, he would definitely agree with you.
He would.
He doesn't see anxiety as the enemy. He sees it as a
what?
A teacher, a guide, a signal that something needs our attention.
So instead of trying to silence it, shut it down.
We can try to understand it.
Listen to what it's trying to tell us.
Exactly. Shift the mindset from anxiety's the enemy to anxiety's a messenger.
And once we understand the message, we can do something about it.
Right. Whether that's practical stuff like exercise, therapy.
Or deeper self-reflection, personal growth.
It's about finding what works for you.
This deep dive has been so eye-opening.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's not just about getting rid of anxiety. It's about understanding it, learning from it, maybe even using it as fuel for positive change.
That's a great way to put it. And I think that's a perfect place to wrap up our deep dive into the world of anxiety.
I agree. We've explored the what, the why, and even some of the how. The complex world of anxiety. But remember, you're not alone in this.
Absolutely. There's support out there, there's hope, and there are so many paths to healing and well-being.
So to our listeners, keep exploring, keep learning, and most importantly,
be kind to yourselves.
And remember, anxiety is a common human experience. There's no shame in seeking help if you need it.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and feel empowered to take charge of your mental well-being. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay well.